Begin the current Daf in Mesechta is Nazir Daf Samach Hey. Begin on the bottom of Samach Dalma Beis, 4 lines up at the bottom of the Yamid, where we continue with the second to the last Mishnah of this Mesechta, continue on the theme of the previous Mishnah regarding the halachas of Tumah, obviously because one of the three halachas of the Nazir is regarding his prohibition of becoming Tummy, and the Mishnah describes, now once we introduce the halachas of Tummy, regarding in general, what is the concerns when you find a dead person in regards to if this is there are other related problems to that Tumas mess. Today's Daf. Some of the discussed in today's Daf are regarding if you find if you find a dead person initially, that's mushkiv kedarka, he's laying in the normal way. So halach is, since you just find a dead person buried there, you could take him and the earth around him, and you could bury him somewhere else. Now, if matzah shleish, if you find three people, and then if they're in a certain area, how Jewish people are generally buried, then and you find three of them, it's like a cemetery, and then you have to be concerned that maybe there's many more dead people over here, and you can't move them, and you have to check actually in the perimeter also. Now, matzah shleisha, if you find three people, we're going to see that there's different cases regarding if you are concerned or not, depending on how the person is buried, if you consider them as Jewish or not Jewish. Shir Tfusa, the Gemara discussed regarding what's the measurement of the earth around that, how much earth do you have to take with the dead person. We also have Machlekes in the Gemara regarding Saf and the Goyim, regarding the Mishnah differentiates regarding if Betchila, if it's initially the tar, actually niskik l'tumah, if you didn't yet have tumah, it's the first time you're having this suffix, then we'll say that it's going to be tar. In contrast, however, if you already had tumah, now you have a suffix, is it becoming tar? Then you're going to say it's going to remain as tameh. Tfusa, some of the important terms and concepts are tfusa. Tfusa is the earth around the dead person that gets saturated from what oozes out of the dead person. Shchunas kvaris is considered like a cemetery because when you find a group of graves, we're concerned that maybe this is where many more people are buried. And nega basar is the halacha of that when you have a size of a white spot and you have the hair that grows out of that, then if that's going to expand, that's going to become tummy. But if it contracts back, then actually it becomes tar. So begin the current daf samach dalma beis, 4 lines up at the bottom of the amid. So the Mishnah continues in the laws of tumah. Hamaitze meis betchila, and that actually just gets into halachas of tumas mes in general. If someone finds a dead person, betchila, what does betchila mean? So it says that you didn't know that this person was ever buried here before. So it's the first time that you're finding a dead person buried. They're doing construction, they find a dead person. So if he's mushkiv kedarkai, if he's laying in the normal way, which the Gemara is going to explain why we're picking this wording kedarkai, so the halach is noitloi. So you could take out the dead person from where he's buried. Now, although Taisa tells us that when you have a kever yedua, that you knew that this person was buried here. The Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin that you're not allowed to clear out the dead person. That's specifically when you know that the person was buried over there. But if you just find the dead person, then the Gemara tells over there in Sanhedrin that you're allowed to take him because since it was never known that there was a burial plot over here for a person, it's appropriate to say that it was only temporary, that the person was put over here. It was a situation, there was a bombing, whatever this, they just had to put the person, buried him over there, and if you're allowed to remove the person, and you also remove estfusasai, you also remove the earth around him, which the Gemara is going to explain exactly what is the tfusa and how much is that. Now that's if there's one person. What happens if shnaim, you find two dead people buried? So they're also not mustafasas, and you can take them, and you take the earth around them, and you can remove them, and you can do your construction, whatever it is that you need the space for. Now, however, says the Mishnah, what happens if matzah shleisha, you find three dead people? So here it's already different. Three is already a crowd. Im yesh ben zel lezeh, if you have between the graves, you have midalet amas v'achmoin, you have from between 4 and 8 amas, hariz shchunas kvaris, that's already considered as a group of graves, as a concern of a cemetery. So which Taisa says, in other words, that now it's revealed that since you're finding 3, it must have been a cemetery, and therefore it's forbidden to take them. The whole reason why you let clear them out is like, maybe it was temporary. If you find 3, we're presuming that this is a cemetery. Again, if it's in the way cemeteries usually are, in a distance that's between 4 and 8 amas. So, moreover, as the Mishnah is going to continue to tell us, you even have to check in the perimeter of 20 amas because most definitely there was a cemetery. And what happens is that they used to bury in caves, as the Gemara tells us at the end of Perek HaMoicha Peres. So the Gemara there explains that this Tana that we're quoting over here in our Mishnah holds that the inside of the Ma'ara of the cave was 4 amas by 8 amas, like Reb Shimon that's brought in the Braisa. Now, this that we say, that you find the 3 people, it's not in 4 amas that you find them, like it's obvious from the Gemara within Sanhedrin, because the width of the kuch, which is the actual grave, like the catacomb, is an amma. And between each one, there's an amma and a half an amma that's open space near the wall of the ma'ara for the 2 walls. So you actually have within Dalet amas 2 kuchen, which in every kuch is as a dead person. So this that our Mishnah is saying from Arba to Shmoina amas, what the Mishnah means to say is that the 3 are placed according to the order of how it's normally buried, which you have 3 mason in the ma'ara, that the width is 4 amas and the length is 8 amas. 2 of them are in the width in 2 kuchen, and the 3rd one shouldn't be further away than the amma and the chatzi amma, which that's the way the caves were, that they have a width of 4 amas and a length of 8 amas. But it's not exactly that in that area itself. I mean, it's in the area, but it's not actually in 4 amas itself. That's how Rabbi Tam explains it. Not like the Rashbam that he actually explains within 4 amas are 3 kuchen, which Tay says no, that's not the case. So be that as it may, in between 4 and 8 amas, if you find these 3 graves, well, that's going to be a group of graves. And therefore, as the Mishnah continues, okay, now even you actually even have to check now in the perimeter in a distance of 20 amas, which Taisus brings from the Gemara Bava Basra actually, that asks, it actually should be 22 amas for 2 ma'aris, which are 16. And you have the chatzar keba, which is, you have the courtyard of the graves, which is like, you have in the inside is the like chatzar. So Gemara says about the according to Reb Shimon Rabban is 6 amas. So if you're going to go ahead and try to see that if you have to the other end, it should actually be 22, not 20. So Taisa says that the Gemara answers over there that we're talking about when there were the miscarriages, which the custom, it was normative that when one of the ma'aris were for adults, the second one was from miscarriages. And therefore the second one is not as big as the first one. They're actually only 4 amas by 6 amas. So therefore that just takes you for a perimeter of 20, not 22. Or that those who want to explain the Mishnah over there, that to say that our Mishnah is like the Rabbanon, who actually hold the inside of the Ma'ara is actually 4 by 6. And then the Gemara says, wait a second, then it shouldn't be 20, it should be only 18 amas. And the Gemara answers that we're talking about with the guy who's checking the Ma'ara, the first one he goes on the diagonal to check very well. And therefore, when we know that these the hypotenuse, you get more distance. So therefore that adds on another 2 amas, that we know 1.4, so you're going to get to 20, even though it's 18. So that's just, again, for the cheshbon about why is it 20 amas, not 22 or 18. But you're checking for the other end to see if there are more graves that are buried over there. Now, what happens if you find at the edge, 20 amas, you find another dead person? Okay, but you have to keep on checking now further out another 20 amas, because there's indicating factors. Because if this was to be the first time that you find that dead person, the truth is you would take that dead person and the earth around him. But now that you already found prior 3 dead people in one spot, now when you find the 20 amas later, even 1 person, you have to be concerned that there's a shchunas hakavachas, that there's a cemetery, and you have to keep on checking until 20 amas. You don't know what was here hundreds of years ago. There might be cemeteries all around this area. They're doing construction, and then you have to continue going ahead and checking and not moving even 1 dead person. Now, the Gemara goes through the words of the Mishnah and pulls apart every word. We had said, so Amar Rabbi Yehuda, he explains the words that the Mishnah used that are specific, what it's coming to say. When we said hamoitze, the word matzah is prat lematzui. If finding means that he wasn't found beforehand. What does that mean? So the Ri explains that if it was known that that this person who's buried, he was buried to be buried over there, then you wouldn't be able to take him, as the Gemara says in Sanhedrin of Mem Zayin Amud Beis. If you find a grave, you're allowed to clear out the dead body. But if it was known to be a grave, so like a matzev over here, I'm saying you know that the guy was buried over here, you're not allowed to move him, even though it's 1 dead person. Says Taisus, the Gemara says over there, if you clear the place, it's going to be tar. And here it sounds like you have to take the tfusa also. So the Ri says, when we said over there you clear the place, it's enough, it's not talking about regarding the tfusa. Because the tfusa is, as we'll see shortly in the Gemara, is the depth of the ground of beneath the dead person. But there is talking about a rabbinic tumah, which rabbinically we matami regarding the whole grave in all four directions. That's what we're saying, that you're not going to have a problem because it wasn't considered as a grave because it was temporarily there. But that doesn't contradict what the Ri says. The Rashbam wants to say something else, but that's how the Ri says that matzah is prat lamatzoi. Now, when we said the next words in the Mishnah, we said hamoitze mess. What does it mean, mess? Of course, what do you mean with the word mess? That's prat laharig. That's coming to exclude, as the Gemara is going to shortly tell us, if someone is killed and he's missing part of his body, he didn't die on his bed, so he doesn't have tfusa and he doesn't have shchunas kvaras. So, although if you would find three people, we said then you have shchunas kvaras, and if you have one person, you have to take tfusasai. No. If a guy was executed, if a guy was killed where he was like mutilated, so then he's missing part of his body, then you don't have this halacha. That's why I say mess, like a person who just died, and versus being killed. Mushkav, then when the next words in the Mishnah were, we find the mess betchila mushkav kedarka. What's mushkav? Laying is prat liyoshev, excluding if you find him sitting. He's actually buried sitting. And kedarka, what does it mean that he was laying in the normal way? Again, this is the Gemara taking apart every word of the Mishnah, showing the diyukim. Kedarka in the normal way means prat, that's excluding l'rosh munach ben yarchaisav. If his head was between his legs. That's not how a dead person usually buried. They're usually buried laying down. And here he's going to be, if you find him with his head between his legs, that's excluded. As the Gemara explains, Tani Ula Bar Chanina, he says, Meis, Shechasr, if you have a dead person who's missing, that's the case we said is when a guy was killed, not died. So Inli Tfusa doesn't have the halacha of the earth around him after being taken, and Velishchun is Kvachas, and neither does he have the halacha of. We're going to say in a second, because the earth, Taisa can explain that the liquid oozes out of the dead person. Oh, no, that's something else. So actually, for this point, Taisus brings on this exact words that if a mace is missing part of him, he doesn't have tfus or shchunas kvaras. Taisus says it's very hard to understand why. And Taisus says maybe it's halacha Moshe Sinai. It's what is this halacha because his chaser doesn't have halacha of a semet of a shchunas kvaras. Why would that be? Taisus says maybe it's halacha Moshe Sinai. But the Gemara does ask the question, v'chol hani, all these other ones, meaning if you find the guy sitting, if you find him laying not in a normal way, let's say his head between his legs, my time aloi, why over there doesn't have the halach of tfus or shchunas kvaras? That says the Gemara, that we say dilma oived kachavmu. Maybe he's a non-Jew, because Jews don't bury in such a way. Maybe the non-Jews do, and therefore that's why, in those cases, we're not going to have the halacha of tfusasai and shchunas kvaras, because we're not going to consider him as necessarily as Yisrael. Now, next words seem to be a brisa, that the brisa says matzah shnayim. If you find two people buried, rosh shalzeh b'tzad mergalosav shalzeh, that this one's head is by the foot of this one, but rosh shalzeh b'tzad mergalosav shalzeh, so they're inverted, and one's head is by the other one's foot. So ein lem tfusa. They don't have tfusa. You don't take the earth around them when you clear them out. Neither are they considered as a group of graves to be considered as like a cemetery. Now, matzah shleisha, if you find three dead people, echad yedua, one of them you always knew was buried over there. B'shnayim tchila, and two of them, it's the first time you're finding that they're there. Oh, the other way, the gear says should be echad tchila, one guy is the first time you find him. B'shnayim yeduma, two are well known. Now, actually, the next words, even though it's the exact opposite, there's different girsayis. If the word is ein lehem or yesh lehem tfusa, so either the halach, because Tais doesn't quote those words, either that it does have the halacha of tfusa or it doesn't, but either way, ve'elam shchunas kvaras. They don't have the halacha of being considered as a cemetery. Why would that be? So Taisa brings from the Rashbam also that the halacha Moshe Sinai. What shaykhs? Why would it be not having halacha of shchunas kvaras? Because the first time that you found out, so you didn't know. So what shaykhs? You told me when you find three people, that it becomes a shchunas kvaras. If obviously if you know there's three people, for sure it's shchunas kvaras. But halacha Moshe Sinai, if it's the first time you're finding out about one of the three or two of the three, then it's not going to be halacha shchunas kvaras. But the Ri does give a reasoning for this. He says, interesting. He says that we shouldn't say shchunas kvaras, meaning that it was a cemetery, because what do you mean you find three people buried there, which is usually an indicator that there's some type of a cemetery? No, since you always knew about one person buried there, if it would be the case that they didn't have in mind to remove him and to carry him out over there. So then, just like we knew about that one, we should have known the other one's there too. Why are we only finding that out now? Must have been that it really was never meant to be as a cemetery, and therefore that's why it doesn't have halacha shchunas kvaras, even though, let's say, two of them were known and one of them wasn't known, or one of them was known, two wasn't known. Like, why we find it out now, obviously really wasn't supposed to be. That's how the Ri explains. So either it's halacha mishnah b'sinai, or there's that svara of the Ri, why it doesn't have the halacha shchunas kvaras. Yeah, the main thing is Elam Tfusa, really. It's really right. Shchunas Kvaras, right. Why does it have to say Shchunas Kvaras? Maybe it's saying that if there would be three of them. That really is only talking about Resh Zeh. Yeah, that's a good point. Probably the two is saying that Elam Tfusa, and Shchunas Kvaras is probably saying that if there's a third one, it also wouldn't have Shchunas Kvaras. You probably can't say three, because then you would think that two would have Tfusa or whatever. But Al Kapam, yeah, that's probably when there's three. Now the Gemara says, "Ma'aseh Rabbi Yishevav." There was a story of Rabbi Yishevav. Shabadak u'mot shnaim yidum. They checked and they found where they were doing. Let's say they were digging up something. They found two that they knew were buried over there. And they found the third one. They never knew there was a third one buried over here. They wanted to make it into a cemetery. And Rabbi Kiva says, "Kol shigata, whatever effort you're putting in, larik yigata, you're putting in for nothing." Because they didn't say it's going to have halacha, but shchunas kvaras el gimel. Some take out the next three words. Legimel Yeduin, Oy L'Shleisha Tchila, but either way, it's only when you knew all along, or it's the first time that you're finding it. But if you had some that you knew and some you didn't know, again, whether that be a smar like the Ri said, or halacha mishum like the Rashbam said, then it's not going to have halacha shchunas kvaras. So even though now you have three, it's not going to have that halacha of shchunas kvaras to say that now you cannot move them, and now you have to check in the area perimeter of 20 amas. You're not going to have that halacha. Now, we said in the Mishnah that when you find a dead person, so noitlon the estvosasin, you could remove him because you never knew he was buried over here, and you could assume that it was only temporary. But you also have to take estvosasin. Says the Tfusa. What is this halacha of tfusa? So maybe the Makra says it's based on the pasuk in Bereshis. Yaakov tells his sons, it says Yosef unesasani mimitzrayim. Now, obviously, you're carrying me out of Mitzrayim. That's where he is. What does it mean? Take me from Mitzrayim. It means tul imi. Take from Mitzrayim with me, meaning take from the earth of Mitzrayim with me, which is taking the tfusa, the earth around them. Now it says, how much is the measurement of tfusa? So Pirish Rebbe Lazar, and the Girsa takes up Rebbe Tzadik, because Tais says this is actually Rebbe Lazar ben Pedas, who's Namayra. He says Noitel offer tichayach. He takes the soft earth, which because of the blood that oozes out of the dead person, because of the juices that ooze out of a dead person, you take from that soft earth, and you also dig into the virgin soil 3 finger breadths, which Yerushalmi explains that the mayhal, the juices of the dead person go into the ground up until 3 finger breadths, and therefore you have to dig in and take out that earth with the person too, because you have parts of the dead person there too. Says, really, is that so? Meisvei, the Gemara asks from the following brayse. The brayse says, "V'kama sher tfusa." How much is the measurement of the earth around the dead person that you have to take? So Pirish Rebbe Lazar Reb Tzadik. He says, "Noitel es kismin." What's kismin? So these are like the splinters that from the coffin of the marble that got grounded down. So that you have to take. Ves kasasis, which there's a few interpretations. Either it means like the clumps of earth, or it's like what you have like kaisis, yayin kaisis, which is like some type of spices that they put into the coffin. Which says it's difficult because if that's the case, then you don't have rekev, which is to take the decomposition because it becomes gilgal and you have something else mixed in, like when you have a coffin made out of wood. Because even the person's here, that's Emily Gaz, the Gemara says Nafnun Alf, maybe that's going to be gilgal and it's going to make that you don't have the decomposition as rekev. Some want to explain kisasis is something that's worn out, like we have a puzzle in Cheskel period kaisis. But be that as it may, it seems to be something clumps around it. So that's what you take along with the dead person. But v'zark esavadoin, but you actually throw away what's for sure not part of the dead person that you don't have to take along. Umanich es esveikis. Now you leave what's in doubt, meaning what you're not sure is from the dead person or not. You put it in a discrete place that should not be matama those who do taharis. Vashar, and the rest, meaning that what's clear to us that it's from the dead person, well, that's going to be mitzdarif, that's going to combine to the majority of the structure of the dead person, or what we know as Rav Minyan, which has its own halachas. When you have Rav Binyan and Rav Minyan, to the quarter of a kav of bones of the dead person, which is metam in the oil, and limloy tarvid rekiv, and for the spoonful of the dust of the dead person, that's metam. Okay, but one thing you see is the Gemara's question is that tfusa, according to Rabbi Elazar Tzaddik, you don't need to take from the earth, meaning you don't have to dig into the virgin soil, only what's definitely from the dead person, or what's a suffix. But from the virgin soil, you don't have to dig into. So that seems to contradict what we just said from Rabbi Elazar. Says the Gemara, it's not difficult because who the Amikai Tana? He holds like a different Tana. The Tana, like we learned the rest, it's a Machlekes Tanaim. This Tana says, V'kamashir Tfusa, Amach Mezer Tfusa, Amr Rabbi Yechon Mishum Ben Azai, which Taisa points out that's not Rabbi Yechon the Amoira, rather it's Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri, that he says, you take the soft earth, and you dig into the virgin soil, 3 finger breadths. So that is exactly like Rebbe Elazar said. So yeah, although there is one Tana who holds that there's no need to take from the earth around it, but there is another Tana that says like him, and that's who he's going like. So the Mishnah said, okay, so when you find a shchunas kvagas, you find 3 dead people, you can't move them anymore. And actually, as the Gemara quotes in the Mishnah, you got to start checking actually in the perimeter in 20 amas. Hey, maybe there's more dead people because generally they make ma'ares and there's caves, and of course that the chatzar kever there's another ma'ara. You got to check in the distance of 20 amas. So we continue to Talmud Beis. The Gemara says an interesting case. What happens, Amar Rava? Let's say badak. Let's say you checked and you found a second grave. Upana. Now the thing is, you only had found one grave. So when you find one grave, you're allowed to clear it out, like we said, if it's the first time that you're finding it. So then what happened was, Badak he checked the second time, Upana, and he cleared out. So he checked, and he's digging, he's doing construction, he clears out the dead person. Badak he checks the second time, Upana he clears out the second person. Badak v'ashkach. Now what happens is that he checked, and he found a third time a dead person. So now you have a shchunas kvagas, but the thing is, you already cleared out the first 2 dead people because it wasn't 3 yet. So on that says Rava, okay, stop. This third one, you can't move him to where the other 2 is because now it's already obviously revealed that this was deliberately buried over here so that they remain here because there's 3 already here. It's already shchunas kavah, so you can't move the third one. But you don't move. You don't have to take those 2 that you cleared out already and bring them back to that one, to the third one, to where he was originally buried, because you already cleared them out. That's one version. Ikadamri, that those that say actually a more lenient interpretation, that actually, Taisa first brings regarding the previous gears, so that some want to say that it becomes a shchunas kvaris. I mean, you're going to have to check 20 amas from now because Lamaisi found 3, so even though there's only 1 here, but you cleared it out, but then you have to check 20 amas. Now, Ikadamri, those that say Omar Rava says that actually Kimishanit Rishus Lipan is a very interesting heter. He says, since you had permission to clear out the first 2 dead, because you didn't know there was a third one, so now actually found the lahain. You could even clear out the third one to wherever you want to, because now he's only 1. And the 1 does not have a lacha shchunas kvaras. Now that's a little bit difficult, says Taisa. If it's a lacha, okay, you say a lacha mashmazinai, but that's very interesting because there obviously was 3 buried over here. Now, the Gemara asks and says, well, why doesn't it become a cemetery? Because even though you cleared out the first 2, you're allowed to, but you know there's 3. So Mashlakish, he says, good question, but Ila Matsu, they found an excuse, V'tirai Eretz Yisrael, and they purified Eretz Yisrael, and that is, we don't want to be Machzik Tumah and to be Machmir in Eretz Yisrael. So, yeah, according to this second interpretation, we wheedle our way out because we don't want to be Tumas and cemeteries in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore that's why the second version holds that you could even clear out that third one because Lamaisa is only individual now. Now the Gemara wonders, Badik me'esrim amma v'loy matzah. What happens if, let's say, you checked in the distance of 20 amas because of the halacha of you found 3 and you have to be concerned that maybe there's a cemetery here, and v'loy matzah, you didn't find any dead people. What's the halacha? So like Taisa explains, the question is, you checked in one direction. Do we say that just like in that direction you didn't find a dead person, you're not going to have to check the other directions too in different directions, or no? So Amar Rav Menashe Bar Yimri Amar Rav, he says, Shchunas Kvaris, meaning a group of graves of 3 that already found, that you have, but you don't have to check anymore. So some take out this next line till the Mishnah, but the Gemara says, my timer, what's the reason? Which either question is, what do you mean, why are you not concerned maybe in other directions? Or Taisa actually has someone explain the question, Badik v'lei matzah mai, means, do you have to dig in the depth until you reach to the virgin soil or to bedrock? And that was saying, no. Why not? So Meshachar says, Ila matzah b'tiyaz Yisrael. Again, they found excuses and they want to purify it, so we don't want to find more tumah. So however we can get off the hook, we'll check in one direction. We checked already, we don't have to check in other directions. Or like the other version of Tais is that, okay, we checked, and we don't have to check down, till however down to the bedrock. That we don't have to do. Now, we continue the halacha, the next Mishnah, which is in a way similar to the coming Mishnah, that regarding this halacha of what's called reglaim ladava. So the Mishnah tells us, kol safek negoyim. Any doubt that we have regarding negoyim. So bitchila, if it's in the beginning tar, it's going to be considered as tar, meaning actually nizkak l'tuma. If you never had addressed this thing to be considered as tameh, which the reason for this is because you remain with your chazaka. If you didn't have any tumah yet, now you're asking, is it tumah? You have a suffix, you'll retain your chazaka that you are tahar, which the Gemara the Mishnah Masechtas Negaim explains what's the case talking about. You have 2 people come to the kain. One person has a nega the size of a gris, of a bean, and the other one has a nega the size of a sela. At the end of the week, they put him in quarantine to see, okay, what's going to happen. At the end of the week, they both have the size of a sela. Now, you don't know which one expanded. A sign of tumah is what's called pasa, if it expands. One of them remained the same, one of them expanded. So and that's what the Mishnah is saying. Okay, we have a suffix of tumah. We don't know which is which. So he's going to be tahar, because you remain with your chazaka that you were tahar. But Mishaniskik l'tumah, but if you already had been tameh, which the Mishnah there explains, that if let's say you have 2 people come to the kain, and one person has the size of a sela, another one has the size of a bean. At the end of the first week, one of them has the size of a sela and more, another one has a sela and more. Okay, so now they both obviously expanded, so they're both going to be tummy. But at the end of the next week, you find that each one has the size of a sela. Now, you don't know which one of them has gotten less than what he started. So here the halacha is going to be that Sveke Tame. So his suffix is going to be Tame, they're both going to be Tame until you have both of them go down to the size of a gris, which that's where meaning one of them start off as a gris.
Where's this Mishnah coming? Why it's there in the going?
Yeah. So that's what we're saying. We're going to see it in the next Mishnah as it applies to this same halachic theme of Raglayim Ladaver, which applies to the laws of Tumah. Yeah. So that's the thing about if you already were tamei and now we have a suffix, are you tar because you got diminished? Well, now both of them have to prove that they're the ones that were, because we're not sure who's the one that started off at a lower point than the other one. So then the suffix is going to be tamei. So says Imam Nani, where do we know this idea that if you weren't niskak l'tumah yet, that we're going to say the suffix of negoim is going to be lahakel. So on that says the Gemara Amar Yehuda Amar Rav says Amar Kra. The pasuk says in Vayikra, it says l'taroi or l'tamoi. It says that this is the Torah of Nega Tzaras. It says there in all these different ways of becoming tamei to purify him or to make him impure. Now, since the pasuk opened up with purity first, the first thing mentioned, so therefore we see that when it comes to the suffix, we're going to say the person is tar. So Gemara says, if that's the case, then why are you differentiating? Even if the person was tamei, tar, you should still say that the suffix is going to be tar, as Taisa explains, because you don't really need the pasuk to tell me actually niskik l'tumah. If you had a cheskes tara and now you're not sure do you have a nega or not, well, that we know misvara. We always know the halach of chazaka. So therefore, Ben Tam explains. The Gemara is asking. He says that why would I say it is specifically mishayin and niskik l'tumah? I should say even mishayin niskik l'tumah. So the Gemara actually agrees to the question. When did we say this halacha of the raya from this pasuk of Latar Latamai? Actually was a ha'idma, was actually going on Rabbi Shua that we're going to quote right now, who actually says you're tar even when you're niskak l'tumah, when you have a suffix regarding a nega. But you're right, our halacha of our Mishnah that differentiates between if you were tamei yet or if you weren't tamei regarding if the suffix is going to be tar or not. That you know from Swara, because you go based on your chazaka. Because what does the Mishnah Masechtas Nagoim say? The Mishnah says the basic halacha. It says in Beheres Karm Lasar Lavin. If the stain of the nega came before the white hairs, that's tamei, because that's the order it has to go in. Vim Sar Lavin Karm Beheres. But if you have the white hair before the stain of the nega, then tar you can be tar. Now what happens if suffix you don't know which one came first? So the Tanakama says, okay, tamei you're going to be tamei. Rabbi Shua says kia. Says my kia. What's kia? So Rabbi Yehuda says kia v'tar. It means to say that it's weak and you're actually going to be tahar. So you see, Rabbi Shua holds, even if you have tumah over here, you're going to have the halacha of that you're going to be tahar, even if you're niskek l'tumah. Says the Gemara, v'dima ki v'tameh, which the Rush explains. Is what is the Gemara asking? It merely means to say, what's the reason of Rabbi Shua that holds you tar? Because maybe it's appropriate to be tameh. So it means like mana and amili. It's just that again the wording in Masechet Nazir is mashuna, but that's the Gemara's question. Why? So maybe this is what he says because you're right. You're not sure. You have a suffix, but since the pasuk opens up with tahar first, so therefore when we have a suffix, we're going to say that you're going to be tahar. Which Taisus wonders says if that's the case, so that on the Gemara's question that said that maybe kia means that you're going to be tamei. Well, that seems to be like the Tanakama. Tanakama is going to be tamei. So what was the Gemara's question? So it brings from Yehuda Mikarvel that says, no, maybe Dilma Kiva tamei means it comes to disagree with Tanakama. Tanakama says you can be tamei misafik. Shua says you can be tamei as a vade mitzvah. And then the Gemara says, no, it definitely means he learns out from the pasuk of Latar Latamai, as Tais explains, by mitzvah you never willy dilly, either tar totally or tamei totally. And which one when you have the suffix? Are you going to be, not going to be a suffix, you're going to be l'taroi because that's the first thing mentioned in the pasuk. Thank you to Anytime for hosting us.